Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I will bring you the tea. Welcome to Chronicle Speaks.
Please, I don't have any time for any gossip now. Eh? Yes.
Look at you.
Tim Norman is currently in jail saying,
I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. I'm fighting for my life.
now with certain people that will ride with a lie and carry it to their graves no matter what proof is laid in front of them, and I honestly believe that Tim Norman is one of those people. Tim is speaking from behind the walls and is still maintaining his innocence in orchestrating the plot to take out his own nephew, Andre Montgomery, in 2016. Tim has less than a week until his sentencing, and his attorney is pulling out all of the stops, trying to make sure that although Tim was found guilty of the crime, he doesn't believe that Tim should do any more than 20 years. Now, we're going to get into all of that and so much more, but before we do, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any news regarding this case and so much more. Now, let's get back into it. Now, we've been following the case of Tim Norman and the untimely demise of his nephew, Andre Montgomery, for years, and we've been slowly getting justice for Andre, with the final sentencing of Tim Norman being just 7 days away on March 2nd. Now, on September 16, 2022, after 7 days of evidence, jurors found James Timothy Norman guilty of conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud in the fatal shooting of 21-year-old Andre Montgomery Jr. One by one, sentencing has been happening for all involved in the orchestrated plan to take down precious Andre Montgomery. Wally Wael Yagnam, who was the insurance agent that assisted Tim in getting the life insurance policies on Andre, was sentenced to 3 years. Travell Anthony Hill, who was the shooter, was sentenced to 32 years, and Terica Ellis, who lured Andre out of the home, received 3 years. Now, they all got lighter sentences for their cooperation with the government, but old Titanic Hips decided to ride the wave and stay on the ship, drowning in his lies and alibis. Tim, after all of the evidence and testimony, still pleads his innocence, even from jail, taking to Instagram today saying this: "Thank you for all the prayers. I'm still in disbelief. The feds know 100% I did not do those insurance policies, but the jury didn't get to hear that. And not one person got on the stand and said that I told them to hurt my nephew. They destroyed my name and image so you guys wouldn't search for the truth." Isn't that what your high-dollar attorney was paid to do? Search for the truth? He didn't bring any truth out there. He tried to debunk and object to everything that was placed out in front of us, showing that you did what you did. If there was truth out there, sir, I'm sure your attorney, if anybody, would have found it, and we haven't seen it. Now, on yesterday, Tim Norman, by and through his undersigned attorneys, did give his position regarding his possible sentencing, and they had this to say: "Mr. Norman's life has been touched by violence and tragedy. Mr. Norman was raised in a single-parent household by his mother, Robbie Montgomery. Mr. Norman's father was murdered on Natural Bridge Road in St. Louis when he was still in his mother's womb. Mr. Norman's older brother, Andre Montgomery's father, was also murdered in Los Angeles. Andre was under 1 year old at the time, and Mr. Norman 15 years old. Mr. Norman also endured the loss of several close friends and family members from gang violence during his upbringing. Mr. Norman and his mother experienced homelessness several times during Mr. Norman's childhood. Mr. Norman and his family did not even have the financial means to bring Mr. Norman's brother's body back from Los Angeles to St. Louis for a proper family burial, nor could they afford a headstone at the time for Mr. Norman's father. The substantial level of poverty resulted in Mr. Norman having very little to support his basic needs, including things such as stable housing and food. Those factors also made Mr. Norman susceptible to the strong influences from local gangs and drug dealers. Despite those odds and difficult upbringings, Mr. Norman was a model student while in school. He achieved high marks until he was incarcerated at the age of 17. Mr. Norman used his time while in custody to continue his high school education, rehabilitate his outlook on life, and most importantly, find a way to support his family when released. Mr. Norman found his calling while incarcerated. He discovered that he had talents in art, specifically performing and creating arts. Mr. Norman took acting and writing classes that were offered while he was in state prison while serving his sentences for his juvenile convictions. He excelled in those courses and eventually wrote a screenplay and pilot for a television show centered on his mother's soul food restaurant, Sweetie Pies. Mr. Norman then, upon release, filmed the pilot himself, directed it and edited it, and created the story arcs for a full season. He then single-handedly pitched the idea to several different studios, eventually convincing a prominent studio to invest in his show entitled Welcome to Sweetie Pies. Now, they go on to speak about how Oprah Winfrey picked up the show. It was a huge success. They had over 9 seasons. And they also spoke about how Tim was very instrumental in showing the racial issues in St. Louis, the gang violence in the black community, and also showing how his family went from poverty to being very triumphant in this soul food arena. They also tried to bring up the fact that Tim was very influential in the upbringing of Andre, saying that he paid for him to go to a prestigious music school in St. Louis, Missouri. And he also tried to make sure that Andre was always on the right path. And in sum, the history of characteristics of Mr. Norman strongly favor a sentence that is no more than 20 years. Now, riddle me this. How the hell did the shooter who cooperated get 32 years and the person that set it up, that didn't cooperate, that took the whole thing to trial and lost, get 20? Where they do that at? They're pretty much saying that during the trial, Travell admitted that he was the one that indeed murdered Andre. And without any objection, rebuttal, rehabilitation from the government, he did say that not only did he pull the trigger, but that he had his own choice to do so. Nobody influenced him to make that decision, and no one pressured him to do so. Travell first admitted that Tim did tell him to do so and was going to pay him $5,000 to do it, which he did get paid $5,000 to do it. And then he said when he was on the stand in front of Tim that Tim didn't make him do it. Then he went back and said that Tim did make him do it. So it was just a lot going on. However, after the murder, the money coming from Tim to his friend DJ Beats, who then gave it to Travell, $5,000. It's just so much proof that Travell was paid by Tim to do so. Now they're saying there's absolutely no basis for the finding that Mr. Norman was somehow more culpable for the conduct in comparison to Mr. Hill. Indeed, the only reasonable conclusion is that Mr. Norman is less culpable than Hill for that act. Accordingly, for Mr. Norman to serve a period of incarceration that is far greater than Hill is directly contrary to the spirit of purpose of Section 3553. He said he was never in a relationship with Terica. He only paid her for sex. What she said was not believable. She got 36 months, which was a slap on the wrist. Decade-long prostitute with tax evasions and other charges against her. He said she should have gotten obstruction and perjury charges arising out of her testimony because she was not telling the truth when she was cooperating with the government. Lastly, Tim says he has to have corrective lenses and orthopedic shoes, and his feet are bad and he's in pain. He say his back is aching and his bra too tight and his booty swinging from the left to the right. Tim got a lot going on. But to say one would be hard-pressed to find any member of the public who holds the belief that a sentence of even 20 years would not reflect the seriousness of the offense, promote respect for the law, and provide a just punishment for Mr. Norman. This is particularly true here, where in light of Mr. Norman's age, medical issues, and the likely expected conditions of his confinement within the BOP could mean that even a 20-year sentence could effectively be a life sentence. Moreover, in light of the sentences imposed upon the other co-defendants in this case, the imposition of a sentence of life on Mr. Norman appears extremely draconian. They said Tim has been going through a terrible life these 30 months that he's been locked up. They said that he's been detained during the COVID crisis, which is recognized by the federal courts across the country, and it's not the good conditions that he's used to being in. Tim is not close to his family or friends at all. He doesn't get any outdoor time, and it's really affecting his mental, and Tim doesn't need no more than 20 years. That should be the max that he gets. But my thing is this: why are you even agreeing to 20 years? If you didn't do none of this stuff, if all of this is a setup, What is the 20 years for? If you are an innocent man, what are the 20 years for? I am happy that justice will finally be served. I have a feeling that Tim will definitely get life, just for the simple fact that he did take it to trial. He wasted taxpayers' money, and he got the same result that he was going to get regardless. You're found guilty. Anyway, tell me what you think about everything going on with Tim Norman. How do you think the outcome of next week's sentencing will be? Do you think Tim will get life, or do you think he'll get these 20 years that he's hoping for? Leave a comment, and you know how we do. We'll talk about it down below. Talk to you guys later. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my new episodes.